going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 2 of The Compass with Dr. Matthew Norton, a show about guiding growth through the power of coaching. And as I stated in episode 1, it's a real pleasure to be hosting these first however many episodes to kind of get us kicked off. If you may recall, in the kickoff episode of The Compass, Dr. Matthew Norton shared his story with all of us, a little bit about his journey, how he got to where he is today, but I think more importantly, the passion behind why he loves being a coach. And today's episode, what we're going to get into is, do you have what it takes to be a coach? And I have a feeling I'm going to leave that there because he's going to kind of carry that through in regards to what that means. But Matthew, it's great to see you again. How you doing?
Great to see you as well. And welcome to The Compass, John. I appreciate the opportunity to not only have you kind of be the guide and facilitator, but also this is newly designated as The Compass, thanks to your creative input. And I love it. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I got thinking about the work that you're doing and, knowing you for some time. And I have heard often, you helping guide people and helping them understand what their North Star is, like keeping them on track. And so, when you think about North Star, there's really only a couple of things: a star, a show called The Star, or The Compass. And so opening door number 2, we went with The Compass. I think it fits you well. And so here we are. So awesome.
Thank you for recognizing that. I'm in one accord with you.
All right. So let's get into this. So do you have what it takes to be a coach? And I think the best way to start this is, what type of coaching are we talking about, Matthew?
Well, we're not primarily talking about being a coach for the local high school football team. So I think it is appropriate that we kind of delineate this. It's primarily business coaching is what I would say. The principles really apply for personal development coaching, for any sort of personal life coaching as well. Some of the specifics as to how it would play out would be different, but much of what we do in coaching applies business or personal. But I would say it's kind of breaks down into the areas of leadership, of workplace culture, communication and conflict resolution, vision and mission, coaching, productivity, profitability elements, relationships, that sort of thing. So I think there's nothing that in coaching that says this is what it exactly needs to look like or who I'm working with. It's broad enough to find a home in many different ways, but as we're talking about, it would mostly be through that business lens. On a side note, there's a lot of confusion, I think, about consulting and coaching. Are they the same thing? And I think the line is a bit blurred, and I'm not sure if I have an absolute answer, but as I've given that some thought, because I think there are differences, the way I've kind of decided to frame it is consultants in general tend to have a more pre-built system solution, whereas coaches tend to help improve the leaders and the team members who are implementing that solution. And then if we went further, that strengths-based coaching is personalized more specifically to that unique collection of leaders and team members. And just for one analogy is, if we were to go back to that football coach situation that I mentioned, we could have a consultant really coming to that football team and saying, this is an offensive or defensive strategy and here's how you implement that. Here's how the plays go. A coach would take those systems, those strategies, those approaches, and say, especially a strengths-based coach, and say, well, who is my quarterback? Who are the running backs? Who do we need to build around certain key players? And how does that relate to the appropriateness of the system that we're utilizing?
Yeah, I love that example because I think so many people, as you know, Matthew, you hear a lot. You hear consulting versus coaching, and I think you just gave a very good depiction of the two. I've always thought of coaching and or a coach or coaches that I think of or remember are those individuals that were there to put the pieces together to help us win as a team or help me win in regards to what it was that I was doing. Like I could have somebody come along, like you said, and give me kind of the pieces and parts and or the consultant in regards to like how I need to put together whatever it is that I'm working on, like in the case of a business plan or just as an example. But it's that coach that on day 7, day 18, when maybe the consultant is gone, that's going to, hopefully continue to help me win. So is that, I guess, a good way to describe kind of how you're coming at this?
I think so. And I've had people come to me that have had other coaches or consultants, but they weren't coming from a personalized strengths based perspective. And they'll say, well, this is what that person said I should do to advance the business or to improve my workplace environment or whatever the need was. And they'll tell this to me, or to grow the business, and they'll tell me what those recommendations were, but I've done assessments on them at this point typically. And I'll say, well, looking at where your strengths are, what your style elements are, that might be generically a good idea, but I don't think that's going to work for you. In fact, I don't think you're going to feel comfortable doing it. And therefore, even if you made yourself do it, I don't think you're going to get the results that you're looking for. And I'm not even sure that you're going to actually be able to make yourself do it. And so I think that's where the personalized coaching piece says, I see you, I hear you, I know you well enough to say, this is maybe where your breakthrough opportunities are, and maybe not that.
All right, so let's think about our listeners that are out there and how this topic of do you have what it takes to be a coach applies to them.
Yeah, I think that I was giving some thought to this as we planned our topic. I see three different categories. If you're listening to us now, which I guess you are, otherwise you wouldn't hear me say that, you're either considering hiring a coach, or you know someone where that might be of value to them in their business, in their life. Or you are currently a coach, either with or without a certification, and you may want to refine or expand your skills, and maybe even add an addition, have a certification or add an additional certification to what you currently have. Or the third option is you're not a coach currently, but you may be interested in exploring coaching as a next career phase. And that could be even part-time, or you may know of somebody who exploring coaching as a career might be a good fit. So I would imagine that for everybody that's with us, one of those three categories would apply.
Awesome. Okay, so for the individual that is interested in becoming a coach in their field, whatever it may be, right? They've proven themselves. They've identified some facts that they've been able to accomplish, and therefore, want to help other people win. Could you talk a little bit about that, and what are some of the benefits of actually a career in coaching? I think you and I've spoke about this as we were kind of planning this out. Of, there are individuals out there that are watching this and or maybe have kind of had that fire to be a coach, but they've never really understood like what does a career in coaching mean. Right. You are certainly somebody that has, built your career around this. So yeah, let's talk about that. And what does it look like?
Okay, I've got basically four different key benefits that came to my mind. One is that your work can be completely virtual. You can work from home or really from anywhere. And for me at this point, and again, I'm at a phase in my life and my career where I have done, multiple decades actually of brick and mortar professional services contribution. And so it was a perfect next phase for me. But then I work and collaborate with people who are much younger than me, who this was a perfect thing for them much earlier in their lives. So that completely virtual element is one thing that's very appealing. It's also an opportunity to break free from any different constraints that you may feel currently in your work. Maybe like how you work, who you work with, when you work, how much you get paid for your work, and how fully also that you can incorporate your key driving values in your work. And that's kind of just to name a few, really. So it's also a creative and engaging way to help people and make a greater impact. So for every business that I coach, I have the opportunity to impact and make a difference in the lives of the leaders and the team members in that business, but also for all the team members who will come to that business in the future, where I made a contribution. I was able to help improve the leadership, shift the culture moving forward. So everybody else who comes and finds a home in that business would be benefited by the contribution I was able to make. And then also for all the patients, customers, clients that that business serves, how much of an impact is delivered to them and making their lives better by virtue of helping the leaders and teams in this business improve. So that's another key element as well. I also just wanted to mention too that, kind of going back to who would make a good coach, or we haven't really gotten into those details yet, but in terms of who this could be for, I just met, like right before we got on this recording, I was introduced to somebody for a conversation. I think I met today the perfect candidate. I have to give a little bit more thought to why she was perfect, and she's already excited to go through my coach certification training program. She was just right there on that. So we'll have to get back on that as to what actually is going to makes her that perfect candidate.
I love that. Episode 3 cliffhanger. We're going to learn
Yes.
more about Matthew's conversation with the potential world-class new coach. I love it. All right.
Yeah.
So on that note, I want to talk a little bit about criteria, because like with anything, Matthew, as you know, there are levels. And not only that, but when somebody is going to, I guess when they come to the acceptance that it would be beneficial for them to have a coach and they need to go look for somebody, there are a lot of different criterias. And I think we've all been in situations where we've had different coaches in our lives, or they, position themselves as a coach and maybe didn't work out the way that it should have, or for a number of different reasons. But let's talk a little bit about some of the criteria. So when you look at somebody and they say, what does it take to be a coach? Can you lay out for everybody what some of those key criterias are to really make sure that that individual is not only going to be successful, but help those that they work with excel and become successful?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. And I've spent quite a bit of time trying to delineate all of this for who are those great candidates. And I think this is really for both for those people thinking, well, do I have what it takes to be a coach, or what might I need to want to develop to become that? But also, I think these are expectations that are reasonable to have if you're selecting a coach. If you're looking to be coached, then I think these are important factors. So I've come up with 10. I've actually have 18, but I came up with 10 that I think are like the highest priority, and then others that I think are also very meaningful. So let's see if we can, how much of this we can cover. But the first thing is a strengths focused, and I already kind of spoke about this. I think it's very important to realize that every person in front of you is a unique individual. People want to be seen. People want to be heard for who they are. We all have different strengths and strengths profiles that we bring to any work environment or to any relationship. Even personal relationships like a marriage, we bring different strengths and style elements, and the other person brings something that's different, and we try to be better together, right? We try to bridge gaps and not have them be sources of undue conflict, but instead to be better together, I think is the best way to say that. So a strengths focus, so that you can guide clients and teams to be able to identify, to understand, to appreciate and to apply those strengths versus emphasizing weaknesses. So that would be one. And feel free at any point as I kind of go through some of this, John, if you want to jump in with a question or a thought there. But a strengths focus is one. Secondarily is emotional agility. And this is one of my core 4 assessments. And I think it is foundational, but you need to have high emotional agility, or somebody that you would be working with as your coach, so you can effectively navigate your own emotions and then also the emotions of the people that you are working with, the people that you are serving. And a lot of times this shows up in stressful situations. We walk into stressful situations as a coach, just like we walk into them as a leader and a team member, right? So emotional agility is one of those things that people are not necessarily born with. I think we come from different familial backgrounds, lives growing up, and whether we were, more nurtured and developed in our emotions or less so, but it can be learned. And based on the assessment and then training opportunities there are to improve that. But I think that is a key piece. And I would even say too, for anybody who's listening to us now, that if you're interested in checking out the emotional agility assessment, then I would say just reach out and state that you heard this on the podcast, and I would be happy to send you one to try at no charge, just to be able to see the value of that assessment tool. Another one is also empathy, which is a key part of emotional agility, so that clients can feel understood and supported. We need to be able to put ourselves in other people's shoes if we're going to coach them effectively. It's not just from our shoes. We need to be able to get as best we can inside their shoes so that we can guide them. So that's kind of all in one is the second one. The third one is to be warm and approachable. If you want to establish trust and build rapport with people, people are drawn to warmth and approachability, then you can have better, more open communication with them. Sometimes this is harder when we look at people's styles and realize that they are more task focused than they are people focused. So it may take a little bit more work to bring out and exude that warmth and approachability. But again, that's all something that can be worked on. The next one, the fourth one, is to really the need to be consistently happy or joyful. So you can bring positivity and support, kind of like when they'll say in an airplane, if we have, if there's a problem, then the oxygen masks will fall from the ceiling and you need to put your own mask on first before trying to help others. I think if you're going to be in a coaching situation, and it probably applies if you're going to be in any sort of leadership position, then it creates more responsibility that you are happy and joyful yourself, that you are functioning at a high level. You need to be able to bring energy to other people. And so if you don't have it, or you're unhappy or lack joy on a regular basis, that will be felt and it will be harder to help people. Hi, John.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you something as you've gone through these first couple ones. I'm noticing that I don't know if I want to use the word soft skills. And maybe you're going to get into some of the additional ones that are obviously specific skills in a particular field. But I'm just curious, Matthew, because I feel like a lot of times I think people that are interested in becoming coaches or things that they're looking for, that they feel like that's an important piece. And yet, there are individuals out there that coach NBA teams that never played basketball, right? and that were successful coaches, or other examples in other industries. But I'm just curious, as you kind of, before we move on to the next ones, like, can you talk a little bit about that and just the value of what really is coming across, which I think is exciting, of like some of these like they're softer, I guess, aspects of somebody being a coach.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to say that rather than softer, although I understand the application of that, the meaning of that term, I think they're human skills, they're people skills. And the answer to the question is it depends. How about that for an answer? It depends upon what you're going to be coaching. So in other words, you can coach where you need clear industry specific experience. You need to have industry specific processes, understanding of software and technology that's going to be specific. You need to have, it would be wise if you had experience in that. But I can also say that I've very effectively coached people across a variety of industries where I had zero knowledge of that industry to start with. Now I learn a lot. I take that as an opportunity, and something that is important for me to master more information in that area, but it's not necessary. So I think these things that I'm talking about that I've clarified in this top 10 are the ones that no matter who and how and in what industry you're coaching, these are the things that are truly necessary. The other ones are, it depends. So there's a kind of a context. So hopefully that answers that question okay for you. So this is a little bit different in this next one. Number 5 is able and willing to ask deep, evocative, and relevant questions. So part of it is what do you need to draw out from people? What mindsets, what blockages, what hopes and dreams, what areas for development can you, by asking the right questions and asking them in ways that will evoke thoughtful consideration and responses. Again, that doesn't require industry specific knowledge as much as it does being willing to and able to walk into challenging territory sometimes with people. Related to that, number 6 is the ability and willingness to shift client mindsets. So we need to be able to break barriers to people's growth and to guide them to more expansive, out of the box thinking, help them to remove resistances. So again, I'm not sure those would as much fall under quote unquote soft skills, but those again are transcend whatever the specific area of coaching that we're doing, that it is necessary to be able to help shift mindsets and to be able to ask great questions to draw that out. Another one is strong communication skills, number 7, to build trust and lasting connections. So if we want to have understanding and implementation of what we're talking about, we need to be able to be good communicators. So that's another piece. Number 8 is motivational abilities. I guess these may still fall into that soft skill idea, but motivational abilities so that we can enhance client commitment and productivity, the ability to challenge people, the ability to inspire them, to help them move forward. So we're talking about clarifying where they need to have blockages, they need to get breakthroughs, but also how can you keep them moving forward? So if you think back again, even to sports coaching, there are certain specific drills and plays and systems that they need to run, but you're also drawing out for them, pointing out what you see that they're not seeing, and kind of pointing a way through, but keeping them encouraged when they may have a rough game or a rough part of a game, and keep them focused, keep them moving ahead. And I think that's another key piece. Then the next one is a commitment to client breakthroughs and progress, helping clients reflect internally on what's blocking their progress, as well as on their doubts and fears. So much of the time, people who are needing coaching, they don't see themselves very clearly. They don't see where they're stuck. Just like the top athletes have coaches, top tennis players that would beat their coach every day, and yet the coach has the ability to see and guide in breakthroughs and progress that player is not able to see on their own. And I think that's the same thing with business owners. We don't see where we're stuck. We don't see where we're playing smaller. We don't see how there's opportunities there and we're not capitalizing on them. There's a continual pattern to where we keep running into a roadblock and we can't see our way through. So that's, I think, another important one. Just a couple more here. Optimism, to inspire clients to overcome challenges even in adverse circumstances. Do we believe for better? There is a kind of a radical candor honesty to speak the truth to people, but also do we believe positively for people to be able to move forward to get those breakthroughs. We need to be able to believe in the people, I believe, that we're helping. A more collaborative approach, also, rather than just a telling and prescriptive approach. There's something to be said for developing the path forward with the person that you're coaching so that it works for them, so that it does indeed fit with their vision, their values, as opposed to, let me tell you how it should be, or here's my prescription for how this should play out. But instead, we're having more of a collaborative approach on that. And then lastly, the need to balance the act of challenging people, supporting them, provoking them, and motivating them. So I think the willingness to do that, not everybody's willing to walk into speaking the truth in more challenging situations while at the same time supporting people.
I love those. And my hope is that for anybody that is listening to this, you had your notepad and pen and you were writing those down. And or when you were listening to you sharing that, Matthew, I think hopefully for a lot of people, it's, them saying, oh, like that's definitely something that's me, or, and then as you went through those 10, that helps them guide them along to them, deciding to be a coach. Is there anything in addition to that? I mean, that was a great list, but is it like, just in addition to that, are there any other factors outside of that you think are important when it comes to this decision?
Let me just run through without elaborating these next pieces. And especially want to mention, because the one that didn't make the cut, and you'd think, well, why didn't that make the cut? That was one of your answers, right? Is that it's good to have expertise and experience to share and guide. So I made the argument for why you don't necessarily have to have expertise in specific industry areas, nor actually have experience in that industry, unless the type of coaching you're going to do requires the data, requires the technical ability or the know-how. So it is good to have expertise and experience in a particular area. And my belief is that people will end up in areas of coaching that inspire them in significant part based upon what they've done already in their lives and careers. But I don't think it has to be a barrier for anybody who's watching us, who is thinking, well, I'm in an earlier place in my life and career. I don't yet have great industry specific mastery or experience. I don't think that needs to stop you. The people need people help. People need guidance as to how to be better leaders guiding teams, and to see breakthroughs in their business that don't require that. The next one is just to list them out. Important to customize services for all clients. It's good to have a valuable network of other professional expert colleagues to be able to introduce people to, able to guide decision-making and appropriate risks in the business. A love for teaching and creating a learning environment is another valuable one. To be able to maintain focus on increasing productivity and efficiency. And then two more are being solution-oriented versus dwelling on problems, which means identifying and implementing strategies. And the last one is clarity, understanding client goals and challenges to ensure effective guidance. So there's a lot of things that can make a great coach. And that's not even exhaustive, but I tried to give as much attention to the ones that I think are most critically important. And most of those, again, can be learned. I really honestly think the opportunity in coaching is it's the passion, it's the desire to develop and learn skill sets. People can be equipped. I believe that I can help equip anybody who came from basically nothing to equip them to be prepared to begin and launch a career in coaching.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think what a lot of people are thinking often when they ask themselves this question, do I have what it takes to be a coach, is that they may feel that because they're being looked up to as the coach, that they have to have all the answers. And so for someone to hear that it can be learned, or there's a process that the coach goes through, right? It can be this gray area of like, well, wait a minute, like, shouldn't the coach, like, at least in our brain sometimes, shouldn't be the coach, shouldn't the coach have kind of all these answers? But so I'm glad that you brought that up. And I think the distinction with a lot of the criteria that you talked about is refreshing. I often think sometimes of people that I've met, the difference between somebody that may come from a different industry that's like a breath of fresh air with different ideas, but yet them being a coach, right? And so therefore, it doesn't mean that they couldn't apply what they've accomplished in another field of work and bring that into, your field of work or what have you.
Right.
But nonetheless, I mean, it's like that distinction is very important. And so I think that this list and this certification and actually building a framework around what you're doing is super important in order to kind of give them some direction.
Yeah. Well, I think even to the point of what you just said there, and even some of the questions earlier about like what experience do we need? My wife, a lot of times when I'll surface out of my office at the end of the day, she'll say, like, what did you talk about all day long with all these people that you've never been in that industry? So even my wife, who knows me better than most anybody, uh, is still kind of like, what all is all that, and how do you do that? And so I think to the degree that somebody, if I'm helping a leader or I'm helping a team member or a full team have breakthroughs and advance, I don't need to know all their systems and processes. I do have a couple I can mention going through my coach certification training program right now, where the wife is very much uh, like therapy, psychology oriented, and was thinking about going in that area, and then realizes she didn't want to be bound by state regulations. Didn't necessarily want to take that long to get to the next part of a career. And so she saw this as a great opportunity to use her drive to want to help people be the best that they could be. The husband is been in a he's been in the world of construction management and things like that. He's much more technical oriented. And so the way he will coach and whom he would coach will be very different than his wife. Or if they work in tandem as coaches, they would each bring unique nuances to that. But again, the industry specific elements are not really required.
Yeah, makes sense. Love this, and I think we're gonna continue this trajectory. As a matter of fact, in episode 3, everybody, of the Compass, Dr. Matthew is going to talk a little bit more about 2 different situations that would lead up to the People Plus Purpose coaching certification program, right? I think now, Matthew, that you've kind of laid the groundwork of those that are sitting there and kind of looking internally and saying, okay, yeah, that's me. Yeah. Okay. I could work on that. Need to learn that. That's me. I think now you want to get even a little bit more detailed of like the different situations that would actually lead somebody to this certification. So just a couple of snippets, as we wrap episode 2, just to kind of let everybody know kind of what's coming up for the next episode.
Yeah. And I think that will apply not only for, again, those people who are potentially interested in going through a coach certification training program or may know somebody who might be, but also for those people who might want to be coached and they're looking at, well, what are some of the different elements? Those will all be things in upcoming episodes that we're going to be addressing. What is it? What are some of the unique pieces that are creating some of the greatest breakthroughs?
Awesome. Well, listen, another great episode for those that are listening. You can subscribe to The Compass on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. And then, of course, Dr. Matthew Norton is, taking these videos and putting up on his social channels. The one thing I would challenge all of you, I was spending some time with friends this past weekend, and, just this topic really got me thinking that you never know when you're going to be in a situation where you're having a conversation with friends and somebody may be interested in something just like this, right? Like they're passionate about it and they just don't know where to turn. And so I would challenge you, for those of you that listen to this, share it out with friends and colleagues and family members that, or what have you. I mean, we spend so much time, having conversations with those special people in our lives. And, as Matthew mentioned, like, this is a career field where, yes, there is some flexibility built into it. So when I think about a lot of the things that people are trying to, build out for themselves moving forward with something that they're interested in, coaching is definitely one of those items. So you're going to learn more as you continue to listen to the Compass, but I just wanted to kind of put that out there to share this information from Matthew. It's really super helpful.
Yeah. Thank you, John. And the people who have gone through my coach certification, I think without exception so far, have been because somebody else mentioned it to them and say, hey, I think that would be a great fit for you. And it's turned out to be that. They didn't find me themselves without somebody else making an introduction. So thank you.
No question. So that's the whole goal of this. We want this information to be everywhere. So when you see it, if you value it, send it on. We really appreciate it. So Matthew, until next time, we'll talk to you then.
Okay. Thank you, John. Bye.